Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining this year's She Se Puede Latinas Make a Difference tour of 2020. Thank you so much for joining us. We are super excited to be here today. My name is Saraí Espinosa Salamanca. I am founder and CEO of Dreamers Roadmap, White House Champion of Change, and Forbes Under 30 recipient. It is my honor to be moderating an amazing panel today titled Chasing the American Dream. Joining me today is going to be some amazing women who have beautiful stories and are doing beautiful work that's much needed for our Latino community. We're going to be talking about different events that have impacted our immigrant and Latino community throughout the year, and how we as Latinas can activate ourselves and the community to do things and do something about it to fix these problems. So without further ado, we have our amazing panelists. May they join me? And I will go ahead and start. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So excited to have this conversation with you guys. I will go ahead and start with our wonderful Reina Montoya. She's an undocumented Daca social entrepreneur. She was born in Tijuana, Mexico, and migrated to Arizona in 2003, fleeing violence. She is a 2016 Social Justice Fellow, which enabled her to start Aliento, an organization which supports 6.5 million undocumented youth of immigrant parents through art, leadership development, and organizing and education. She is a founding member of the first Teach for America Daca Advocacy Board. Okay, Queen. And she is a fellow Forbes 30 Under 30 social entrepreneur. She's a lead organizer who prevented a bus of undocumented immigrants from deportation for the first time in the nation's history. Wow. Okay. I'm out here reading bios and shocked, and I've already read them. And subsequently stopped the deportation of her father. Thank you so much, Reina, for joining us. Up next, we have Stephanie Bonilla. She's a student of Farmer Workers Alliance. She's a DACA student at Delaware State University. She was born in Veracruz, Mexico. Where are you, Stephanie? There you are. We have a couple shared folks just so y'all can see her. She was born in Veracruz, Mexico, and came to the U.S. with her mother at 4 months old. She joined Poder Juvenile Campesino, a farm workers youth program through the NC Fields in 2016. And in 2019, transitioned into the PJC to the NC Field Board of Directors. Okay, Queen. And then she joined a streaming committee of Students and Farm Workers Alliance in January of 2020. SFA is a student-led network that organizes with coalitions of Immokalee. Did I say that correctly? Yes. Immokalee workers and bring justice to the fields and end exploitation of farm workers. Thank you so much for what you do. Up next, we have Yesenia Cuello. There she is. She's a former child farm worker. She worked in the tobacco fields when she was a teenager and now helps farm workers as the executive director of the NC Fields of North Carolina-based nonprofit organization. She has lived in rural eastern North Carolina since she was 5 years old. NC Field is a nonprofit organization that works with migrant and seasonal farm worker youth families, utilizing grassroots organizing principles to teach leadership, promote education, and facilitate opportunities. Thank you so much, Yesenia. And then we have your tocaya, Yesenia. This is Yesenia Polanco-Galdamez. She is an immigration attorney at Polanco Law. Yes, Queen, I see you. She immigrated with her family from El Salvador in the 80s and lives in North Carolina. She's a community leader and advocate. She's the vice president, and Yesenia, correct me if I'm wrong on how to say this. She's the vice president of the Durham People's Alliance. Is that how you say it?
Durham People's Alliance.
Okay. Of the Durham People's Alliance. Thank you for correcting me. And she's a board member of the Durham Expungement and Restoration Program. The acronym of that one is DEAR. She is an American Immigration Lawyer Association. She's a speaker on special immigrant juvenile status. And she practices in areas focusing on asylum, naturalization, citizenship, family-based petitions, removal defenses, and deferred action for childhood arrivals. Wow. Ben, les dije, what an amazing panel of women. What an honor to be here with you guys. Thank you so much. And I am so excited to have this very important but very difficult conversation with y'all today. We're going to go ahead and start off with speaking about what has been going on at the border for a couple of years now. So, as has been widely reported, thousands of children have been separated from their parents at the Mexican border, some even detained in cages. Let's not shy away from it, but let's also provide a brief but honest point of view on what can be done to help, starting with voting, and why Latinas can't, the keyword is can't, why we can't afford to turn away from this problem, even if they're not directly affected. So any of you can go ahead and get us started and answer this question.
I'm happy to start, y'all, as an immigration lawyer, and then someone else can chime in at any time about lived experience. So to me, it's super important to think back to 2016 when Trump came into office, our current president, because I think it's very important for us to remember that the consequence, right? The actual consequence, the lives of the people that are affected, the children that are at the border, the families that are getting separated, the individuals, the humans that are detained right now in detention centers. This is not by coincidence, okay? This is not by coincidence. And this is why, like you just said, voting matters, right? Your vote does absolutely matter. So in 2016, the first thing that President Trump did, policies, right, family separation, and putting children in cages to send a worldwide message that if you come to the United States and seek asylum, this is going to be part of your future. This is the consequence, right? So, and it's not just about tone and rhetoric, right? So we hear that tone. He set the tone for immigrants that are seeking asylum, but he also, in his rhetoric, in saying, you should do this the legal way. People should come to the United States and seek asylum the legal way. Well, this is the legal way. The legal way is to present yourself at the border to tell the Border Patrol that you have a genuine fear of returning to your country to seek asylum. And so then the consequence, right, of that tone and rhetoric or the intent behind that is that people would be deterred from coming to the United States. But it's also about policies. And that's why voting matters, because when we vote for the president, when we vote for our Congress representatives, for people that are going to really vote in our interest as constituents and citizens, then we get policies that are in line with our values as a country. In the past 4 years, these policies have not been in line with who we are as a country. So that's why voting matters.
Right. Oh, I think that's perfectly said, right? And I think oftentimes there's this kind of like stigma, very much so in the community of color, that our vote doesn't matter, that our vote doesn't count, que por qué lo hacemos. And here y'all have it from an attorney who works this every single day, dedicates her life to it, y'all. It really does matter. So it's extremely important to really get yourselves out there. Thank you so much, Yesenia. Does anybody else want to chime into this question?
I would love to chime in, coming from Arizona, a border state where we have seen it firsthand what it looks like. I think that's something that it was really crucial to say. It's the fact that this is not new. We had to see the rhetoric amplified in policies, but we also saw it during the Obama administration. And I think for us, the real question is like, how do we make sure that we're building an ecosystem and a movement that goes beyond election? Yes, election matters. That's the first step. But as soon as politicians get elected, how do we make sure we as Latinas are ensuring that these policies don't become a reality, that we don't have little kids who are escaping violence? Me, as someone, as an immigrant who escaped violence, who my dad got kidnapped and had to see all the trauma that my dad and my mom had to endure to migrate to the United States for safety, I know what it's like. I know what it's like being terrified about staying in your country of origin and not knowing if you stay there, that might be your death sentence. And many families right now from Central America are going through that. And they're making very, very difficult choices. So what is our responsibility as and that we're not thinking about a moment, but we're thinking about a movement. So we're going to be holding those elected officials accountable to ensure that these policies are not the law of the land.
Reina, and in your experience, what are some ways that we as a Latino community can keep these elected officials accountable?
There's so many ways that we can keep people accountable from, if this is an issue that you care about, how do you make sure that you are writing a letter, picking up the phone, tweeting at your elected officials? How do you make sure that when things like this are happening, that you're having conversations? Because I think that one of the biggest things that I have seen is that these things happen when good people of faith remain silent. So if we are not speaking up, if we're not engaging with our neighbors, with our comadres, and we're not talking about it, then it goes, these injustices go underseen. So I think voting is a really great tactical tool, but also being able to have those tough conversations with comadres when they don't want to talk about it and they would rather talk about other things. This is the moment that we have our power of influence to ensure that we're educating each other.
Thank you, Reina. I agree 100%. And I'm seeing your comments coming through. And yes, definitely, we have to vote for our comunidades that don't have that privilege yet, who don't have that voice. It is our responsibility for the folks who do have that privilege to go out and vote, to do so for ourselves, for our families, and for all of those who don't have that privilege just yet. Yesenia and Estefany, do you guys want to talk a little bit about it, or we can move to the next one? Y'all let me know.
Yeah, so one thing that I feel gets forgotten a lot, especially, is that people don't vote locally. A lot of people think that local elections don't matter as much as like the big elections, like the presidential elections, but it's very important to go out and vote for your local officials because they make direct impacts upon your community. I think it's very important to remember that. And also, as younger generations, who are just coming into the ability to vote, oftentimes we do feel like it's not like we aren't making an impact with our votes. But if every person who said my vote doesn't count voted, it would be a significant impact that would be had. And I think we have to remember that like all of our votes, no matter how small it might feel, will have a significant impact in the long run.
Definitely. Beautifully said. Thank you, Stephanie. Wonderful. Okay, so we will go ahead and talk a little bit about, again, another one of these things that has been really impacted since the new administration came in, and a lot of people have been affected. So the current administration has vowed to end the protection of 700,000 deferred action for childhood arrival recipients. This affects all Latinas because even if you are a citizen and you don't need to worry about the protections or your protections to be taken away, you do have to worry about your cousins, your friends, your neighbors, and all the other Daca recipients. And even if they aren't the subject of those things, right? Like I feel that this is something that tugs up at everyone's heart just because you know someone, and if you don't know someone or has someone in your house who already is a DACA recipient, maybe someone at your job has this permit and you have no idea, and they've been going through so much, like so many emotions. I myself was a DACA recipient for 3 years, and I remember even applying for it was terrifying. Like I really thought like, no, they're just gonna like grab us all and they're gonna deport us. But it did change my life. It was the thing that like inspired me to go back to school and continue to be a leader in my community. So with that being said, voting for candidates who share our viewpoints and values is key to helping this problem. But what else, if anything, can the average Latina do about it? So again, right, thinking about like what can we as Latinas do to move and protect these people and these young professionals? A lot of mujeres feel this pain, but think that they lack the power to do anything about it. So how can they get involved? Again, this is from your lived experience, or how can we activate other Latinas across the country or just community members to find a way to help these students? Any of you can answer. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Stephanie.
So from personal experience, I know it's kind of hard to talk about our experiences, and it's very kind of scary to really let people know your status and let people know what you've gone through. But oftentimes, if you're comfortable enough sharing that with those in your community, sharing that with your friends, and letting them know the struggles that you faced, can really open their eyes. Because I feel like oftentimes if someone doesn't know you, like, as a person, like, they know from media, they know from the internet, they don't know it on a personal level, and then they tell them, and it's like the veil has been absolutely ripped off their eyes, and they're like, I never knew about this, and I didn't know that this is what you went through. And it's I think it's very important to you don't have to talk about your traumas, you don't have to get people to understand, but I feel like humanizing, like putting a personal story to it can help those around you, but obviously not if you're uncomfortable. There's no need to share traumas in order to get people to understand. But I do feel like it is very important to talk to those closest around you, because then they can start talking to those closest around them. And then that begins a spread of information and education within the community.
Definitely. Yeah, I am a firm believer of the power of storytelling. So yes, that's absolutely a way that all of us can, again, right? Like if you yourself are a DACA recipient or an immigrant yourself, sharing those stories with friends and family so that they can see that it's not just something on TV. It's not just a story. It's actual people, and it's people that they know and on the daily just live around. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
If I can chime in on that, because I feel in the similar wavelength as Stephanie, I am also a DACA recipient myself, and it's been very difficult because I think that people have this perception about DACA recipients still being students. I am no longer a student. I am turning 30 this year, believe it or not. So a lot of things have changed. And when I think about the DACA recipients, we have anywhere in the spectrum between really young at the age of like early 20s, all the way to like mid 30s. If we're thinking about that 30% of the DACA recipient community already have children. So we're talking about mixed immigration status families, that the children were born here in the US. So if something like DACA were to be completely taken away right now we have to renew every 1 year. But I know that has been a threat for many of us, about thinking, is this the last time that I'm going to be able to renew my DACA? What is going to happen? So it has all these very personal fears and anxieties that come with being a DACA recipient. But there's also that resilience about that, how there's a saying, we're not pobrecitos, we're not victims, we are survivors, and we have endured so much that we need that support system. So if you're a Latina out there and you're thinking about how can I support DACA recipients right now, expand the conversation. There are many young people who are undocumented who weren't able to apply for the DACA program because they were too young to apply before the Trump administration ended the program. There's also right now DACA recipients that are parents, that are young professionals. So how are we ensuring that we're providing systems of support? Right now, many parents who are DACA recipients are having to face this very difficult decision about, if I were to be detained, who can I give temporary custody of my children? And that's heartbreaking. I'm not a mom, but I remember having those conversations with my undocumented mother about my little sister. What's going to happen to Angie if one of us were to be in serious trouble and be in deportation proceedings? So for me, what I think that there's always one thing that you can do, that can be either educating yourself, volunteering with local organizations that are doing the work. You don't have to be an expert, you just have to care.
And I think that's key, what you said, right? We don't have to be experts, we just have to care. And as Latinas, I think that's embedded in our blood. We care, we love, we're passionate, we want to take care of. So we're all capable of doing that. I know in the previous comment question, it said the average Latina. I'm like, I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know if there is an average Latina. We have so much to us and so much potential to us. Stephanie or Yesenia, did you guys want to say anything else on this behalf? Yes.
First, I'll say that I am anything but average and
That's
basic.
right, Queen.
Okay? Primero con eso. And yes, we care too much, ladies. So what these young women have said, and I say young women because I'm 37, so I'm probably, if I had to guess, I'm the oldest on this panel. Um, Storytelling is exactly what I was going to say. I think, and I also get to call people out as a US citizen, as a voter, as a citizen. I get to call out other US citizens who, especially US citizens who are naturalized, okay? Who that means that, for example, like me, I came to the United States as a 4-year-old with my family who have fled from El Salvador from the Civil War. Okay, we obtained, we were able through policy at the time to obtain a green card and citizenship. Okay, through policy, so it could have changed like this. In just one change in policy, I could have today been a DACA recipient. And I want to remind that. I want to remind all US citizens, especially US citizens that are naturalized, okay, that it is totally uncool for you to forget about DACA recipients, about undocumented students, about people that are undocumented and their plight, because it could have been you so quickly, and it likely was your parents, and it likely was your relatives or your neighbors. So I get to call people out because I'm anything but average. And keep telling your stories, ladies. Keep telling. It takes. I know that it takes a lot of courage. It is very, very uncomfortable at times to tell people, that your family crossed the border, that your family came to the United States undocumented, that you are here undocumented, that you are a DACA recipient. So I applaud you, and I call out all U.S. citizens that do not or do not take a stand on your behalf.
Thank you so much, Yesenia. So this next question, I'd love to hear from Ms. Cuello. It says, last month, a whistleblower complaint about the ICE facilities in Georgia alleged that officials were refusing to test detainees for COVID-19, shedding medical records and submitting by detainees. I'm sorry. I'll start that again. From shedding medical records submitted by detained immigrants, fabricating medical records, and underreporting COVID-19 cases, and in most startling accusations, performing hysterectomies at an alarming rate to Latinas, who in many cases did not understand what was happening to them or why. Can you speak to the facts of this matter and why this is an important issue for Latinas to consider, and what, if anything, they can do to help?
Actually, Seti, if you don't mind, I'd like to add something onto your previous question, just because I hear everybody talking about, the importance of sharing their stories, and I definitely share that with my fellow Latinas here on this call and everybody watching us. So I was born in the U.S. I do know that I was privileged to have been born in the U.S. due to the sacrifice that my mother made by coming into the U.S. But I am a first-generation citizen, but I was raised as undocumented, as some people say. And I'm really sorry. This is really emotional for me, but also realizing that is a privilege, and creating a space for people to share their stories is extremely important. And sometimes I'll shy away from sharing my own story just because I do understand the importance of listening, but also putting a face to our experiences has made or has had a huge impact on not only my community, but other people that have watched this, that have shared it with their own community. So my mom is from, just a little bit background about me. So my mother is originally from Morelos, Cuernavaca, Mexico. And my dad is from Santo Domingo, from the Dominican Republic. And I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. But definitely, I know that whenever I speak about my story and having come here and knowing that whenever we first arrived, we didn't understand anything, definitely reminding myself of where I came from and where my parents come from encourages me to continue the work that I specifically do, and actually a little bit of the work that we all do. And honestly, this call has been so empowering to hear. It's always good to see that, we're not alone. Our vote counts. Everything that we do counts. And even just something as sharing your story is a whole lot bigger than what you think, and can have a larger impact than what you would expect. So I definitely wanted to put that out there, and knowing that, allowing people the space and the safety to share their story definitely encourages people to open up.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Reina, did you have any comments on what's going on at the border with the COVID cases and the medical records?
It's definitely has been disheartening to continue to see the lack of human dignity that we're seeing and the multiple human rights violations that are happening in the detention centers. When I first learned about many people that I knew about that were inside of Eloy Detention Center or other detention centers, that they actually contracted COVID and they had to endure very horrible conditions because there's a lack of understanding that people behind detention centers are human beings. And at the end, what is our responsibility as Latinas, as other human to human, to understand that there's like implications that are going to come if we don't decide to act and do something about it. And sometimes hearing these stories can be very daunting. You can feel disempowered. You can feel so little that you may be only 1%. But if we remember that si ponemos nuestro granito de arena, if we continue to put our part, we can be that echo chamber to ensure that people at the bare minimum have decency and human conditions.
Thank you so much. And then Ms. Polanco, as far as from the legal side, as an attorney, what can we do as Latinas and as a Latino community to try to fix this and stop this and not let this be a normal for folks at detention centers?
Thank you, Sarai. So my brief answer, the short answer is absolutely what the whistleblower did. She was just so courageous to speak up and out. And that's what I said earlier about calling out U.S. citizens, right? She is a U.S. citizen herself. What interest did she have, right? It wasn't like the women that were inside of the detention center their voices were loud enough to get the press's attention. It was this woman who risked her job, right, as a whistleblower to speak up. And that's why it's so important to have allies and to become allies. I want to remind people that detention centers, okay, are private prisons, okay? They are corporations, publicly owned corporations. There are a lot of people that are making bank. They are making money off of the backs of our friends and families and neighbors. Okay. And I'm not going to go into like a legal lesson on removal, but I will say it's very important to understand that deportation proceedings, removal proceedings are quote unquote civil. Okay. So the entire idea, the entire concept that corporations are private and profiting from the detention, okay, the literally the deprivation of someone's liberty. Okay, these are basic constitutional issues and constitutional rights if we get down to law school, right? And literally the law. But more so, if you think about it as a public issue, again, aligning things with our values as a country, is this the type of country that we have become? A country that prefers to have these private prisons pocketing money, which means that they get to make all the policies that they want. So as a private prison, think about public detention centers, right? Like jails and federal detention centers. You can call up representatives and tell them what's going on there and try to hold people accountable. But private prisons, when the owners are private individuals that are pocketing the money, it's a whole nother ballgame that we have to become aware of and mobilize and organize against, right? So I'm going to keep it there because I could lecture on and on, but that's the one of the main points that we have to remember, that the proceedings are civil, they're not criminal. So why are people being detained as criminals? And that the location where they're being detained is a private prison, okay, that is for profit. So someone is profiting off of the backs of our family members. Are those our values as a country?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for informing us on that. I think oftentimes, right, like we we tend to think, or at least for me, I'll speak for myself, right, that when these places are kind of put in place, we can't question it. There's no way around it. That's just the way it is. And hearing you and everybody on this panel says everything but the opposite, right? Like these institutions and places were put in place by a man or a woman or humans. And we are women, powerful women, capable enough to undo that stuff and undo these places of injustice and take seats away from people who do not align with values of keeping, just how you were saying, right, that the basic constitutional rights, human rights that someone, regardless of where they're coming, has. So just thank you to all of you for sharing your stories, for doing the work that you do on the ground, because it's extremely important. And I really like the comment that I believe Yesenia Cuello mentioned earlier, was that we are not alone, right? I don't know if it was Yesenia or Stephanie, but basically it's that, right? Like I think oftentimes as immigrants and shying away from sharing our stories, we think that we're the only ones. We feel that we're the only ones going through it. But in reality, there's millions of immigrants. There's millions of people going through this. And yes, I think the anchor and core for me here is exactly that. Sharing our stories, mobilizing ourselves in our community to go out to vote. When we're born with this privilege of being citizens of the United States, what can we do to mobilize our communities, right? So for me, for example, I'm a legal permanent resident at the moment. So I'm kind of like in the middle, right? Like I'm no longer undocumented, but I'm not a citizen, so I can't vote yet. So what do? My role that I've taken upon myself is to educate all of my family and friends who are citizens, sending them information on where they can register to vote, taking them to the polls, sometimes even driving I remember 2 years ago, my nephew was like, can you take me to the polls? Like where, I don't know where to go. So I took him to like the local library and like drove them there, and they got me like the little future voter sticker, which I still have, by the way, because I am a future voter and I can't wait to vote. But it's that, right? Like oftentimes, and it goes back to this kind of situation where when we see this big problem, we oftentimes paralyze ourselves because we think we're not capable or big enough, or our voice won't matter, or that what we have to say no one will listen or hear. And that is not true. I think like as Latinas, we have this powerhouse of voice within ourselves, for our family, for our communities. And I encourage each and every one of you, Latina and Latino and ally who's watching this now, to use your voice, to be, yes, information is power, to be that person to provide this information. Because I mean, just like a whole other thing of its own, it's like voting is not as easy to do, but it can be done with the right information. So I encourage all of y'all to again, use your voice, use your privilege, use your story to change the world and make it better, because we all deserve that. And I am hopeful, because of the folks on this panel, because of the stories that are being shared, that it will get better. And we will, there is a brighter tomorrow, because the younger folks are emerging. We have these amazing leaders who are kind of how Yesenia Polanco was saying, right? They're calling these people out. And we're no longer afraid. We are using your voice. And I believe someone shared in the chat earlier on Facebook Live, we are Latinas, hear us roar. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that is our time. Like our time is now. They are hearing our roar, and we'll continue to do so, because we are just getting started. So with that, I'd love to transition into questions from the audience for our panelists here. So we have a question, and it says, here, let me give me 1 second. Maria de Jesus asked us a question. Are any of the speakers aware of any ministries or churches able to get into the family detention centers currently to aid parents and children? So I believe the Yesenias are in the East Coast, and both Reina and I are over here in the West Coast. Do y'all know of any churches or ministries at the moment who are doing this work?
So my law firm has an office in Lumpkin, Georgia, which is about, I would say, maybe like 4 hours from Irwin, from the detention center that we discussed earlier. I think that because of COVID, it might be difficult right now to enter the detention center. There are efforts that can be done once people are released. I don't have information about the border towns where the children are separated from their families, unfortunately. So I would recommend maybe hitting up some of the big nonprofits that are doing really awesome work, like Al Otro Lado, or in Lumpkin, Georgia, El Refugio. Lumpkin, Georgia is in, like, the majority of the detention centers, they're so far away from cities, from families. They're just situated so remotely to make it impossible for people to reach help. So I think that if you're able to help in mobilizing your church to go there, that would be really awesome. But just note that with COVID right now, it's even very difficult for lawyers to get in to see their clients. A lot is being done over Skype and remotely. So I would be cautious that it might not be possible to actually get into the detention centers.
Thank you, Yesenia.
Another organization, just to do like a quick plug in, it's Freedom for Immigrants. They do a lot of work. They're based in California, so definitely look them up. They do a lot of work around visitations and coordinating with that. So
Beautiful.
You might want to check them out.
And then Ms. Cuello, did you have another suggestion? Sorry, did I see a hand? There you go.
No, yeah. So I'm definitely with the Yesenia. It might be just the Yesenia thing, but I'm definitely with the Yesenia. I've got close friends and neighbors and friends that are actually over at the detention center over in Lumpkin, Georgia, to be exact. And I've even looked to try to make the trip, and honestly, because of COVID, a lot of things, not only, I mean, apart from the fact that it's already not an easy process, it was taking twice as long in order to do something like that, and everything is done virtually. So I've seen the same thing. I feel like the only thing we can do now is definitely educate ourselves, and like how I've heard a lot of people mention, as far as like educating ourselves, our neighbors, our friends, having those difficult conversations, so that whenever things start hopefully going back to what we'll call a new normal, we'll definitely know the process and how to go about navigating those difficult situations.
Thank you so much. We do have another question that came in, and what role do sanctuary cities play with Dhaka?
That's a very tricky question. Sanctuary cities right now, they've been going there specifically in those more like liberal cities, and even within that, we have heard cases coming out of California that even though if you get stuck in the criminal justice system, they're still transferring people to ICE. In places like Arizona, Georgia, and other places that we don't have sanctuary cities, it's definitely very terrifying being undocumented. With Daca, I think that's a misconception. If you have Daca, if your work permit is valid, you're not supposed to be detained. Unfortunately, we have heard cases of people being detained and holding ICE processing detention centers, and luckily we've been able to pair them up with attorneys and get them out. But I think that's the bigger question here is like, what happens to the undocumented community? What happens to people like me that currently have Daca? And if Daca were to be terminated completely, we're going to be at risk of deportation. So now more than ever, we need a permanent solution. We need Congress to be able to act and provide a permanent solution for Daca recipients like me.
Thank you, Reina.
I'll just piggyback on what Reina said. She said it perfectly, and she answered the question exactly right. What the question is maybe what could be or what should be the role of sanctuary cities, right? Well, number one, should we have more sanctuary cities, right? And sanctuary spaces like churches and places for people that are in imminent fear of deportation. And number two, the role I would say that a sanctuary city could play is speaking out directly. Local city councils could make statements that say, we're not allowing ICE to come into our cities and detain individuals, right? When Daca, if Daca were to end, if and when TPS ends, right? we are not allowing ICE to come into our cities to detain our neighbors. So though that I think is another question that can be asked that has a practical solution.
Beautiful. And where can we get information to educate ourselves and our families?
I really like United We Dream. I don't know if y'all would agree, you know, thumbs up if everybody likes United We Dream. I think they have a really good website that actually has like direct points as to like what to do. And I love to go on their website to find information for like communities when something changes in the law that's specifically like related to Daca and issues like that. I really like their materials. They're very fast, and the material is very easy to understand and read.
Mm-hmm. And then along that same kind of, yes, Yesenia?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback a little bit apart from United We Dream. I know that somebody mentioned something about any ministries or churches. And then whenever it comes to, I'm not really sure about them being, it was a previous question about them being able to get into detention centers. But over here in Eastern North Carolina, actually up in Dunn, North Carolina, we do have an organization called the Episcopal Farm Worker Ministry. And I've gone to them a lot whenever it comes to resources and creating that space. Filtering through information, because we do know that there's a lot of misinformation, especially on the internet. So I did want to put that out there as an option for people to get resources and information. But yeah, it's the Episcopal Farm Worker Ministry.
Thank you.
I also want to add more resources to the list. We at Aliento AC, you can follow us on social media. We put up a lot of toolkits, so they're bilingual. We're getting ready to hopefully add more languages to that. But definitely go to our website or our social media. We also have a podcast. I co-host that podcast with my partner, Jose Patiño, who's also a Daca recipient, where we break it down and make it really accessible for people to understand the information from not only the legal standpoint of view, the policy standpoint of view, but from the human perspective, because I feel that sometimes when we talk about immigration, we forget that we're talking about people.
And what brings y'all ladies hope? Kind of with this wild year that we've had, these past couple of years have been like a roller coaster, que a veces nos sentimos bien, a veces nos sentimos mal, a veces lloramos, a veces gritamos. What brings you guys hope? Yes.
So one of the biggest things that brings me a lot of hope is my parents. You know, they came here, they've been here my dad's been here for probably 25 years. My mom's been here about as long as I have been, so about 20 years. And just seeing their resilience through everything. Sorry, this is so, oh gosh, I get so emotional. Okay. It's just seeing them and seeing how they've gotten through all the hardships, despite everything, despite what the administrations have done throughout the years, despite what policies have changed locally and also nationally. They continue, and not only my parents, other parents, hearing stories from other undocumented folks, hearing stories from other Latinas. It's absolutely beautiful knowing this resilience exists, and that, you know, no matter what happens, they're not going to bring us down. And if anything, we're going to continue building. There's so much power, and I think that gives me the most amount of hope ever. Knowing, you know, today I might not feel great, but I know that behind me I've got wonderful support and wonderful Latinas that will help guide me towards the future. And it's just seeing all of it, just seeing even this panel right now, it's so emotional seeing all of y'all here, and just all the power that's just on this screen. I'm truly, truly, truly grateful for everyone.
And we're grateful for you. Thank you so much. Who else? I'd love for all of y'all to kind of give us that one thing that brings you hope.
What gives me hope right now, it's young people. When I think back, I started getting involved when I was just 19 years old, and now a little bit over 10 years later, I'm still seeing so many young people like here in this panel too, that are saying no more. We're not gonna take this no more. We're gonna do something about it. We are not gonna continue to wait for people to save us, but we're gonna share our stories. We're gonna share our strategy and our thinking. And when I close my eyes, I see Darian, I see Lupita, I see children who are undocumented, who are Daca, who are from mixed status families that are saying we're not going to be waiting for policy and for laws to change. We're going to take the future up on our hands, and we're going to do something about it. We might not know all the answers, but we're going to make sure that we're choosing each other, and we're talking about mental health. We're talking about the role of trauma and the role of healing in this place, and how can we really build a different future for us, and how can we be each other's village.
Thank you, Reina.
My family, I think, just, we all have this in common. Like, it's family, it's older generations and younger generations and us. Like, we stand here, with our ancestors. Just, it's like we're all in the same space at the same time without even knowing it, right? And so we have the perseverance and the resilience of all of the people, of all of the women that came before us. Our grandmothers taught us so much, our aunts taught us so much, and now as an aunt, I'm helping to teach younger people. And my mom, this weekend, yesterday, we were doing a Latino caravan to the polls, and I'm really, really excited that my mom and my dad came. And so they were in the car with me, and we were making noise. We had the horn going, and I'm like, yeah, we're going to the polls, Latinos, and we're so excited. And then my mom's like, church is at 5:00, and I was like, please don't tell me this woman's going to want to get dropped off at church, because that's very much like her. And I'm like, well, Mom, here's the thing. When we get to the, to the library, we get to vote. And she's like, sí, hija, para todo hay tiempo. And I was like, yes, thank you for not asking me to drop you off at the church, because she would definitely do that. So we got there and she voted. They voted, she and my dad. We helped them. We did curbside voting. They brought it. They didn't, at the poll last year, we had an issue. They wouldn't let me help my mom. She's limited English proficient. She wasn't going to be able to read the ballot. I wanted to help her. They didn't have interpreters. That was a problem. But this year, it was so beautiful. It was so smooth. They brought the ballots out to the car. I helped my mom fill it out. I'm like, busque todas las personas, just find them, just, circle them in, and I'll help you. And it was just very beautiful. And she gave me that hope that she took. Y'all, I keep saying this to families, like, a lot of us have so much energy and time. Especially those of us that don't have kids, I'm just calling myself out, to do a lot of this volunteer work. But that's not the case for a lot of our family members. They have to work. They have priorities. They have other things to do. So it's important, like the other women have said, take them to the polls, like that's how you can help, taking them. And so to me, it's really, really, really beautiful to see naturalized citizens, especially, go out and exercise their right. And they're just like, yeah. And that gives me hope. And that's why I want to continue to take them, to the polls.
And what a way to take them. I need to do that when I become a citizen. It's a party. We Latinos love to party, so why not make it a party caravan con la música y todo, and making it there. That's beautiful. Thank you, Yesenia, for sharing that. And then, Ms. Cuello, did you want to share yours?
Yeah, definitely. So I want to say that what gives me hope is definitely my mom. Definitely growing up with her, and just her giving us, the image of what it means to truly be independent, and then just striving for that. And then knowing that, she's already made her sacrifice, and now it's our turn. And the fact that, it is our right as people that are eligible to vote to go out and do that for the people that aren't eligible to do it. And then definitely knowing that, whenever it giving up just isn't an option.
Right.
Definitely hearing the stories from everybody and everything that people were saying, like I feel like I know it sounds cheesy for me to say tu voto cuenta, but tu voto cuenta. We do understand that, intimidation at the polls definitely exists. So definitely, if it requires, you putting yourself out there, it's definitely worth it. And honestly, I feel like that's what truly gives me hope, knowing that, to be honest, for me, they're giving up. I feel like that's what I've told myself. Giving up just isn't an option for us. And the fact that together we are powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that like really consummates what we as Latinos are, right? Like, giving up is not an option. Like, nos apoyamos el uno al otro, y aunque estemos solos, no estamos solos. Like, hay toda una comunidad de mujeres, de allies, de personas que like really care and want to see you thrive. So I thank all of you guys for being here. And yes, a ver, let me see here. Ooh, there's a party tonight. We were just talking about parties. Don't forget to join the party today at 5. RSVP is required. So please go to the link and visit the website of She Se Puede to get more information. So yeah, me distraje con el party. Pero bueno, a lo que iba era, ¿qué es eso? No, like, just thank you to the ladies on the panel for joining us today and just having this difficult but much needed conversation. And for everybody who's joining us on live stream, thank you for taking the time. And I really hope that we can take this conversation to the next level, right? That's our dinner tables with our friends and family, people that oftentimes, as we were saying, it might be an awkward conversation. It's maybe sometimes that situation is like, oh, aquí no hablamos de política. It's like, well, we're kind of at a point where we have no choice but to talk about política. So here it is. And really taking that time to bring these conversations to the table, because the time is now. Su voto sí cuenta. And I am really excited to see the turnout of la gente. Now you have no excuses. Make it a party. Si no les gusta estar allí solos en fila, join the party tonight. And up next, after here, we have the Latina Power Hour. So la celebración sigue. And there is the link. She Se Puede just put it up for the RSVP for the fiesta later on tonight. Que Dios me los cuide, me los bendiga. Thank you so much for your time and energy. Reina, did you want to say something?
If I may, if people are struggling about talking about politica and they want a like quick sentence starter, only 46% of Latinx community voted last election. 46%. So when you're saying mi voto no cuenta, more than 50% decided last election. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but if you want Latinos, Latinas, Latinx community to be taken serious, we really got to amp those numbers up. So remember, 46%, and then we got you. There's organizations out there that were getting out the vote. So make sure that your vote matters and that you are using that privilege and that right, because many of us don't have that.
Thank you so much. Beautifully said. Stephanie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, have those uncomfortable conversations. Make them uncomfortable. You have that space. Right. Make them uncomfortable. But yeah, let's go vote, guys.
Woo! Okay, familia. Y con eso, we will wrap up this session. Join the party later. Reach out to these ladies. They have beautiful stories, beautiful resources. And feel free to reach out to She Se Puede for any other resources and information. And que siga la fiesta. Adiós.